Hello and welcome to the Tractor Beam Comics Reviews on the Ion Cannon podcast, part of the Star Wars Underworld podcast network. I'm Matthew. He's Chris. We've got 3 stories to dive into, so let's get right to it. First up, Bounty Hunters number 37, written by Ethan Sachs, art by Davide Tinto, and covered by Marco Checchetto and Marco Menyz. Here's the Marci Menyz. Here's the cover. Pretty sweet cover. The haunting secret mission of Jango Fett. Our Dark Droids tie in, the bounty hunters must contend with the looming shadow of the sins of Boba Fett's father. What is the secret that lurks on the mysterious droid outpost, the Haven? Who is Tarkligson, and what is his connection to Jango Fett? Chris, I'll throw this to you. What were your thoughts on this issue?
Well, it's got Jango Fett in it, so you know I'm going to love it.
There you go.
One of my favorite characters from the prequel trilogy, going back to me being about 11 years old when I first seen the trailer. And this is great because it really does a great job with Ethan Sachs does a great job with kind of jumping back, juxtaposing the current timeline with the prequel timeline of the same location, same situations with different behavior of certain characters. So I loved everything about Jango Fett, first and foremost, just how we get to see more of his side of things. We don't get to see a lot of him in Star Wars canon, but I feel like we got a lot more of a benevolent side, or he's caring for this guy, trying to get him out to safety, a friend of his. And then it shows off his amazing skills as a pilot, shows off some amazing skills as a fighter, including hand to hand with knives, which I've never seen him use those weapons before. So I was like, oh, this is really cool new Jango Fett information. But I also love like the bounty hunter crew themselves. They're starting to feel kind of lost a little bit. They're like, I don't know if this mission's even worth it because Father Valence is losing his memory. Is he going to be completely gone by the time we get there? Is this worth our effort to risk our lives for the umpteenth time for another mission that might not end well for any of us? So I like that whole thing with Tonga is the one that's keeping the crew together. And then what's her mentor's name? The other woman,
Kel.
Yeah. Yes. And then like Kel, I like how she's dealing with the mentor. Cool seeing Dirge again. I'll say that every time. And it's nice that we got that really good tie-in, Matthew, with Ajax Sigma, and he's like very religious sect of droids that have like freedom. So it's really cool. Like apparently, I think this is like a droid world from the Legends sphere of things. I think I've seen. So all in all, it did a lot for me. Whether it was the action as usual, cool insight into characters like Jango Fett, and just the overall like fleshing out of this Dark Droids era. We're getting more of a backstory for certain segments, and we're seeing again the Scourge might be attacking Zuckuss and 4LM at some point there.
Yeah. I mean, as I said in the social posts, I live with prequel nostalgia just in my veins. It's not even nostalgia. It's just, hey, that's my Star Wars. And so, yeah, whenever we go back to especially a character from Attack of the Clones, the one film that people ignore as to their peril, and how important that film is to the development of every character that we see going forward, especially of course Anakin, Vader, etc. We'll get to Vader in a minute, but to Boba Fett, and the question that they ask, can we trust Boba Fett? And whenever there's an affirmative answer, it has to do with his father. It has to do with the values and the discipline that Jango instilled in him, that we see, for example, in it's the Age of Rebellion one shot. I remember very clearly that it takes place really during the Age of Republic, and here we see kind of the eras getting blended. But well, again, another thing we'll get to shortly. So talking about like you mentioned, seeing Jango's positive side, trying to help his friend. We don't quite know the story. So the sins of Boba Fett's father in the publisher description, not quite clear what that's about yet, but very much interesting. Yeah, like you mentioned, the Ajax Sigma and all these mystical droid beliefs around the sacred base that organics can't step foot on, and how Bylert and Vader and all these other characters, these cyborgs are this mix, this almost, maybe they might call them abominations, I don't know. But clearly in the kind of current timeline, and with the bounty hunters crew set after Empire Strikes Back, they're welcoming the assistant to the administrator, who turns out to be Tarkligson himself, who ends up we see being a cyborg, which is this fascinating twist. Of course, we hadn't really been introduced to Kligson before. seeing it'll be curious to see going forward how he reacts to Jango's son, if that gets him more leeway. Yeah, and it turns out that this is the person who can help Bylert. Hopefully, well, here's the thing. Hopefully, regain his memories, but he doesn't want to. He wants to, I think, turn him into. I forget what at the ending. I read this at like 1:30 a.m. last night, so I'm trying to remember
What the hell?
what's happening, but what his motivations are more nefarious, and maybe turn him into full droid. I mean, maybe that leads into not to say Ajax's, but the Scourge's
Hmm.
intentions. Again, that's another question with this whole thing is we thought, just going back to last week, or was the first time we our issue number 50 here, we thought Ajax was the villain. Turns out he's
Mm.
not, but maybe he's. I mean, I'm always curious whenever they handle religion in pop culture. I mean, that's my kind of my jam here. But religious belief, like the armor in the Mandoverse, right? Is are we going to project our senses of villainy or heroism onto religious figures, or are we going to see them more complex? And those of us who actually are in it, hopefully, have a sense that
Yeah,
it's more complex. So
I
but
just like how the Ajax Sigma is basically a warrior priest. Like,
yeah.
in Dark Droids #1, he's all like, "All right, I'm putting away the piousness of me, and I'm gonna just battle this thing head
Hmm.
on." So I think at the end of this, we're gonna see the Scourge be defeated, obviously,
Yeah.
by Ajax Sigma. What happens? What becomes of them? I like the lore that's given to us with this character. That was introduced, that's going to be helping Valence. Tar
Hmm.
clicks in. Apparently,
Yeah.
his family is one that has safeguarded Ajax for a millennium. So it's like,
Right.
wow, this really goes back a long ways to,
Interesting.
again, more history at Star Wars is always a good thing.
Hmm. So no, you go ahead.
I like the overall architecture. The artwork was fantastic of
Hmm.
everything going
Yeah.
on around, and again, I just love the Jango Fett stuff, seeing about how good of a pilot he is, and the
Hmm.
way that the art represents that with him like doing like these corkscrews coming around, just
Yeah.
I don't know what faction these enemy ships were from, but apparently there was a heist that was gone wrong. Kind of reminds me of a certain thing that might have happened earlier in the week based off of a show or something that might have come out, but
Yeah. Sounds familiar.
um but yeah, overall, like, my thoughts were, I'm very excited now. This is interesting because we
Hmm.
have all four of these major Star Wars tie-in Dark Droid issues are out, so the
Hmm.
first wave is basically now complete. We're going to see what happens with Dark Droids #2. Are some of these characters going to start floating into the mainline Dark Droid story? We know next month we're going to get the D Squad story.
Yes.
I think 4LOM is in that
Let's
crew,
find it.
I believe. So when they separated, I was like, oh, this is where they're gonna shoehorn in 4LM to become part of the D Squad. So that's gonna be fun because we haven't
Mhm.
seen that since Clone Wars about these people
Yeah.
coming in to take over the D Squad, these droids, and they're going to be doing a secret mission with R2D2. So I'm
Trying to
very
find the
curious
ad
about that.
for it. There's the ad for here to the beginning.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
here we go. So here's the D Squad. Comes out in
Oh,
September.
yeah.
Um, I love that. I mean, again, speaking of things from the prequel era that people just ignore, that whole arc from Clone Wars, yeah,
Yeah.
it was such a fun little, very George Lucas little thing, and that it's a very kind of, you know 2020s Star Wars thing to bring back. Like they
Oh.
brought Jango Fett back. I mean, Attack of the Clones is being kind of rehabilitated in a lot of people's minds, but uh,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So let's rehabilitate D Squad next. They're next. They're next. You have any final things to say about Bounty Hunters #37?
Yeah, I'm curious to see more of Boba Fett himself. I think he's gonna come back into the
Mhm.
fold. He's
Yeah,
gone for this chapter of the story, but I think he's gonna play a major role in this. We know, again, we know these characters have to be in a certain place when Return of the Jedi
sure.
rolls around. We know Boba Fett has to go back to Jabba's palace.
Hmm.
Actually, funny story. I just actually read his short story that's now in, from a
Right.
certain point of view, Return of the Jedi, that actually deals with the ramifications of what he did with War of the Bounty Hunters. I really like that little short story that was in there. Uh, References to Valance, references to Dengar, references to Jakara, Han
Mhm.
Solo and Carbonite is a huge thing, obviously. So very much looking forward to again, I think the Ion Cannon guys or Doc Holocron or somebody put out a
Mhm.
video the other day about, oh, how are these comics going to end? How is this current phase
Right.
of comics going to end? And yeah, we're hurtling towards that climax. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't. I mean, Joel and I are the Iron Cannon guys, so I don't know if it was us, but
It wasn't. Now that I realize it was
this,
Joel on there with
yeah, it was probably
Doc
Joel
Holocron.
on Doc's channel. Speaking of which, this Monday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific, Doc is joining Joel and me on the Iron Cannon podcast to talk
Mm.
about Darth Vader Black, White, and Red. That run that finished.
Oh.
So yeah, I mean, we're gonna all kind of merge together a little bit. Fair enough. As I bring this out, all right, let's move right along to Hyperspace Stories number 8. Oh, you got it too. There we go. It's like we both
So
buy comic books.
funny
Yeah,
enough, this was the
yeah,
only issue I had at my comic store to pick up
yeah,
physically. So we were figuring out last night,
yeah. There we
are
go.
we gonna just skip Bounty Hunters? Are we gonna just do it another time?
Yeah,
And I was like, oh, screw it. I'm
yeah,
gonna bite the bullet and buy the darn thing. It was like
yeah.
the only
You got
way
them
I
digital.
actually solidified that in my mind of why I would actually defend myself buying. I was like, oh, it's a Jango Fett issue.
Yes. There we
I'll
go.
be able to pull it up on my phone at any point I want
Grab
to
a
see.
variant. Grab a variant when it comes out, because this
Oh
is when
yeah.
your store gets it in to that. Those are pretty cool variants. Anyway, Hyperspace Stories number 8 by written by Michael Moreci, art and cover by Andy Duggan, of course, in the
Mhm.
Hyperspace Stories, the Star Wars Adventures. I don't know if it's not technically Star Wars Adventures, but it's the Dark Horse.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Andy Duggan tends to do both the art and the cover there. As the First Order grows in power, so that's all right. As the First Order grows in power, Supreme Leader Snoke dispatches Kylo Ren and General Hux to the planet Caraxes, to enforce his will upon the populace. As Ren hunts a fugitive through the wilds, Hux works to find a new, cruelly inventive way of enforcing compliance. But how far can the Caraxians be pushed before they have nothing left to lose? The one thing that sticks out to me is just how much Kylo feels like Grandpa. Feels like the kind of thing Vader would go and find this family and intimidate them. Even the whole when the troopers are defending that compound, the family house.
Mhm.
He says, "You have chosen poorly." I could hear Grandpa. I could hear Vader, and that you have chosen poorly. And
Oh.
clearly, I think he's trying to channel, and Michael Morrissey and Andy Duggan trying to channel what we've read of Vader in comics before. It's interesting. This is technically an all ages comic, being in the Hyperspace Stories, the Dark Horse run. Kind of scary. Kind of.
Mhm.
I mean, that happens with anything to do with Vader and the dark side. But also, yeah, I mean, it's still Kylo Ren trying to channel Vader. It's not Kylo Ren being as strong or powerful or intimidating as Vader. Also, then you have the side story with Hux unleashing that monster. I forget what the thing's called. I mean, I just read it a few hours ago, but
I
unleashing
don't
that
know.
monster onto the populace, as it says. Kind of, I can see younger audiences finding it fun, but also, wow, they're willing to risk going through some stuff just to intimidate.
Mhm.
I mean, again, it makes me both storylines make me think, yeah, the First Order at this point is uh Empire light. It is Sith light. They're trying to get to the extremes that the Empire would go through, the extreme kind of intimidation that Vader would go through,
Mhm.
to bend a society to their will. Kind of fumble it around, and clearly Snoke is all, like, he's kind of giving a face palm, like, what are you guys doing? Why are you guys obviously grumpier and angrier, but why are you guys being so false, to not false, but like half baked about this? And yeah, it's uh it was good. It was effective in communicating that they do end up succeeding, of course, in whatever it is. We don't quite know what the order is. We're never getting that. I wonder if that would have made the story a little more coherent. All of a sudden we're introduced to, this other guy out in the forest. He's the one who can give the order. We don't quite know what it is. I don't know if they'll pick that up, because that's the thing, is these are kind of one shots. But yeah, this one set in the Rise of the First Order. Um, if you tuned in on Monday or went back to the main episode of Monday on Canon podcast, I went into these eras and how sometimes, I guess sometimes it makes sense. Like with Dark Droids, is it set during the Age of Rebellion? Is it set during the rise of the fall of the Jedi? When's it set? This one clearly, of course, Rise of the First Order, and even has the little First Order logo on it, so that makes things clearer there. But yeah, set clearly before the Force Awakens, when the First Order is actually able to bring worlds to their heel. So good, interesting little thing of them on their way, kind of lampooning a little, not lampooning, but taking script cues from The Last Jedi. The whole,
Mhm.
I mean, Snoke is always putting Kylo down, and that's also another thing that the dark side does. They never try to build people up. They're always putting each other down, and of course the rivalry between Kylo Ren and Hux, that was great to see. Just I mean, that one scene
Mhm.
in the turbo lift, the elevator there, where Hux is talking away, and Kylo doesn't say anything, and is like, "Okay, fine, I'll do it your way."
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
he like
so,
gets in his face. I like how they have the
yeah,
different images of like him getting in his face, like closer and closer in
yeah,
his personal space. He's like, yeah, okay.
yeah,
But I
yeah.
mean,
Go ahead.
I absolutely love this issue. I don't know if I could say I'm nostalgic for sequel trilogy content already, but we don't
Yeah,
really
you
get a
can.
lot of it at all anymore. So the fact that we're seeing Snoke, the fact that we're seeing Hux and
Hmm.
Kylo pre-Force Awakens, and just it is really funny the way you put it. Like when you have these two buffoons, there's these two young guys, they're in their early 30s. They're not really leader material quite yet. And you have this wizened old force user Snoke who sees the future. He knows what needs to be done, and he's
Hmm.
somehow these two buffoons have ended up in command and power. And he's like face palming, basically, like, "What are you guys doing, man?
Yeah.
Like, just take over the planet." What I like about this issue is, of course, like you said, it's dark. I really every time I read a hyperspace story, I'm like reminded why I like these more than IDW Star Wars Adventures,
Interesting.
because they actually take bigger swings. They're not babying the audience. They're all ages, which means I can enjoy them. My 8-year-old niece can enjoy them if she really cared about Star Wars as much to pick one of these up.
Hmm.
But it's something that ends where the bad guys win.
Hmm.
We really don't talk about that enough in Star Wars. Is like there are some certain occurrences where the bad guys actually succeed in what they want to do.
Yeah.
The whole crux of this story is simply you got one person that has one way of doing things, another person has another way of doing things, right? Kylo has his way, and Hux has his way. And I like, again,
Hmm.
in this way, you get to see that juxtaposed, like, okay, this way versus that way. Where Kylo Ren, he is like the bastard sword approach, where he's just swinging, literally swinging his saber, just taking people out
Hmm.
by fear, intimidation, just like give me it or you'll die. Like give me the person that is in command or you're gonna die. And
Hmm.
then you have Hux on the other hand, who uses more of a scalpel, I guess. And he's
Yeah.
kind of like, okay, I'm gonna pressure you guys to where you need to have our support. And when you have that support, you're basically ours. We own you at this point
Hmm.
because now we can just say, okay, if you don't want our help, your little nations get overrun by these monsters, and well, you need stormtroopers to protect you. So, yeah, we're gonna take over your planet for security's sake. And so I like how those both approaches came together, and it's nice to see that we have um, again that little tie-in portion where you get an object that has the force
Hmm.
bestowed upon it, like the light
Yeah.
side, because that little teddy bear is passed between
Yeah.
Jedi, between Sith, between characters like Rey through all different parts of the timeline. So like Kylo Ren
Hmm.
doesn't know it, but like yeah, it's like one of those little things you blink and you miss it when you're reading the comic kind of thing, where
Hmm.
it's like, oh, in the background the girl's got the little stuffed animal there, and that's what's tying everything
Hmm.
into it for the like the sake of it. But yeah.
Yeah, I wonder. Sorry if that. Sorry, guys. Was singing, chanting yes last night. I wonder if that little bear Teddy is gonna have some sort of bigger significance, maybe in the last issue. And then this is 8 of 12. If there's something. I mean, yeah, it's just through line, just the purity and innocence of the light, and how that. I mean, Kylo Ren. It's gonna be his task to snuff it out. That will never ultimately succeed. Of course,
Mhm.
I mean, I wonder. I'm almost thinking, is Ben Solo gonna have that there or something? wind up
Oh
with it.
my
I don't know,
gosh.
or somewhere like maybe in Ray's in the Skywalker settlement on Tatooine at the end. I don't know. I'm
Mhm.
just thinking out loud here. But yeah, it was yeah. I mean, again, the order, the extent that Hux will go to, but turns out not to work out. Right? It's you can't actually control this monster. You have to have a wannabe Sith take it down. Yeah, I mean, it's almost to say, yeah, Hux, interesting, being the scalpel, like Tarkin is trying to be the scalpel. Um, yeah, it makes me think again of yeah, so the Kylo Ren Hux is Vader Tarkin together, and they're kind of, I mean, they're more at each other's throats than Vader and Tarkin were, but um, this kind of plays it up a little more. Yeah, cruelly inventive way of enforcing compliance. Yeah, it doesn't quite work out there. Anyways, yeah. So Hyperspace Stories, Emerald. Do you have anything more to say about that?
I'm just excited for the next issue. It's the one I've been waiting for. Quinlan
Mhm.
Voss and
Yes.
Cad Bane. I mean, that's gonna be sick. Having this huge moment of a character that was brought up with the Dark Horse comics that is Quinlan
Mhm.
Voss,
True.
and we're getting Quinlan Voss back with Dark Horse comics. So
Mhm.
I've never actually read those comics. I know people like Chris Sequel from Star Wars Underworld always
Yeah.
talks about how those comics were very revolutionary for him and all that sort of thing with his love of the character. So I'm looking forward to seeing. Hopefully, that sells well enough where they actually like do
Yep.
more with that character specifically. Maybe I mean, because it's unclear what's going to happen
Mhm.
after issue number 12 comes out with the
True.
series. I'm very curious because I know that they have the pool to do some more harder edge stories. Of course, Marvel's more responsible for that, but why not give us like a more mini series at this? We know we're getting the Death Star type of storyline that's coming. I think actually in September this year. We'll see
Mhm.
if they hold to the date. But yeah, I'm just looking forward to. I think Dark Horse is doing a great job. I'm pretty sure we're gonna get the High Republic stuff. I guess that's coming out either this year or next year.
Yep.
The next phase. So yeah.
Mhm. I mean, speaking of which, the Phase One collected edition
Hmm.
finally came out this week as well. I know that was complications in the industry.
Hmm.
IDW had the license, but then now Dark Horse is finally releasing it. Yeah, I mean, I definitely
Nice.
want to see Quinlan in more stories. I think he's kind of, they're building up to it. I mean, in the show, in the Disney Plus show, he gets name dropped, and then we're getting him in the Dark Horse. Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, like a short run. I want to see a Marvel. I want like an adult short
Yeah.
run. Um, maybe something, I don't know, in or around Dark Disciple or something there too. But
Mm,
yeah, or because yeah, those Republic comics and Legends were. I haven't read
yeah.
them. I have a few of them, I think, but definitely, yeah, where
Okay.
he started to shine. I mean, that
Oh.
one of those side characters in the Phantom Menace, right, on the bar, and then I'm
Side
undercover.
of the
Don't blow my
road.
cover, Qui Gon. And then yeah, so we'll definitely have that. We got one more story for you here. Shockwave by Alexander Freed. This is the original fiction in Insider number 220. I have found it. I have it marked here. So I'll
220.
well, it's in issue
Oh.
number 220. Here it is. Here it is. Here it is. Okay, we both got it. There we go. That looks fine. Here we go with the Stars and World Network. We're professionals. Why not? Yeah. There's no publisher summary. Insider short original fiction in the Insider short stories. What I'm trying to say, and yeah, I really enjoyed this. It's set right after the Battle of Endor. It's X-wing pilots who are responsible. I forget the name of the main character, but I was really uh, impressed by the way Alexander Freed was able to write a deeply human story
Yeah.
in the middle of all this conflict and all this military buildup. And of course, it's reflecting on it in the past. It's the loss of the potential loss of not just of this character's husband, but the loss of the relationship, and then how this droid has helped save it. Um, Deeply moving relational story. It's been a bit since I read it, so you remember more. So you read it more recently. So what did you think of this story?
Yeah, I thought it was really impactful the way it opens up, right?
Hmm.
We're always seeing the Death Star explode. It's like, okay,
Hmm.
most ships got out of there, right? All right. But it was intense. Like she's
Yeah.
trying to escape literally the shockwave of the Death Star. But metaphorically,
Hmm.
what the heck is a shockwave? This shockwave is just all these emotions that have to do with the buildup of
Mhm.
the rebels completing their mission, the Emperor Vader now defeated, while a lot of people are cheering and praising each other for their hard work and their sacrifice, there's others that are just a little bit down and out, and it's just kind of hitting them all the losses they've had.
Mhm.
She has a loved one that was also flying with her, and
Mhm.
the crux of the story is she thinks he's dead. She thinks he's out there still. She's too debilitated to go back in the X-wing. He
Mhm.
comes back to her at the end, but it's a lot of reminiscing. I guess the story is a lot of her
Yeah.
thinking back to the good times, them kind of starting off a lot of it's like the classic rebellion story where people are kind of thrown into the rebellion or not necessarily like,
Mhm.
oh, we're gonna just join right now. Like they kind of through circumstances, kind of happenstance happened where they're on this planet, they put together this droid, found an X-wing, and then we're like, okay, let's give back to the
Mhm.
rebellion or something like that. But the thing that stood out to me was the droid Melody, literally a droid
Mhm.
that they built up and they replaced the droids usual beeps with like musical chimes and tones. And that
Mhm.
was like one of the biggest things that stood out for me. I would love to actually see and hear this droid in some kind of Star Wars project in the future, because it amazes me with Star Wars in general how they often iterate on these droids
Mhm.
every time with whether it be a book or a comic or anything. They're always finding new ways, usually making them look different, but the fact is, they literally made it sound different, which is not
Mhm.
something that we get oftentimes with just Star Wars. But sound is super important to Star Wars.
Yeah, that's true. It's a great concept, and I mean, in a prose like a text story, be it like a short story here or a novel or whatnot. Yeah, it is a great way of bringing something new and something more heartfelt. Like you, I mean, with Hyperspace Stories, you had the doll. Here, you have the droid, and kind of this product, almost like their kid, right? This product of this couple whose relationship is being forged in this pressure cooker of a rebellion, of a war, and but they also have this bit of sweetness to tie them together. um yeah, the shockwave, the aftermath, you can use that phrase, like the implications of both the loss and the stress, but also it being over potentially. I mean, we know we have the year until the Battle of Jakku, but this great transition moment for the galaxy and for the people who live there, and uh, this one person, one focused view on what is that moment like for her. You know, what it's like, say, for Iden Versio. We know what it's like for so many other heroes, for Han and Leia, right? We've read about that. Yeah, I definitely want to see this droid. I want to hear this droid. Um, because we could have other droids that look in different. I mean, Chopper looks and sounds different too, and Dave Filoni with the voice there. Yeah, I want to hear. Yeah, that's a great point. I want to hear what this droid is about. Yeah, I'll admit this is the first thing of Alexander Freed that I've read in Star Wars. I know
Whoa.
this is so shocking. Iron Cannon, I know I'm trying to have an eye on paper canon, but it's making me definitely want to go into reading some of his other work.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, so see, he wrote the Alphabet Squadron trilogy, right?
And Battlefront Twilight Company.
Yeah, and
So
Twilight Company. Yeah.
what Alexander Free excels at is exactly what's represented in the short story
Yep.
here is it
Yeah.
focuses on the character, the human stories, not
Yes.
so much about the lightsabers, not so much about the force, but it
Hmm.
really brings gravity and
Hmm.
realism to the Star Wars universe
Yeah.
that fleshes out these characters. And especially when he's given that 3 book the
Sure.
trilogy, he's really able to just bring these characters and flesh them out to some of the best degrees that
Hmm.
we've seen in Star Wars, period.
Right.
Um, really getting into the psyche of the characters, seeing their turmoil, seeing their successes, seeing their failures represented so well. I can't ever recommend Alphabet Trilogy
Yeah.
enough.
I definitely
And it
agree.
really deals with some cool Sithy stuff too, which surprise,
Interesting.
surprise, you wouldn't think would happen in a
Interesting.
book like that. But it really
Yeah.
goes into Operation Cinder, especially,
Mhm.
and again, Battlefront Twilight Company was a tie-in Battlefront book, even though that game didn't have a single player story. This book basically provided a single player
Right.
campaign story for the game, essentially. And yeah, I mean, this guy is a great writer. I'm not sure if he's writing all three. I think there's 3 short stories from what I imagine with this Return of the Jedi
Yeah.
little focus. So I hope he gets to do the other two, but we'll see who writes if there's anybody different. But
Mhm.
I'm not sure if he's actually doing a short story in the from a certain point of view.
Well,
I should
has he
check real
been?
quick.
He might have been in the New Hope and Empire ones, and so if so, then
Yeah.
I have read stuff from him. But yeah, I that definitely impresses me. And having and I'll admit this, admitting this on YouTube, whatever. Yeah, doing those two best of lists episodes that Joel and I did,
Hmm.
really showing me how much of a gap this uh Alphabet Squadron trilogy is in my canon knowledge. So I need to fix that soon. Of course, phase 3 is just around the corner. I have to finish phase 2. So yeah, we'll figure that. We'll get that. We'll get that. Well, don't worry. Here's the thing about the way I work and the way I think is it's good to just take things slow, to get time to listen, to kind of to think and time to breathe. Then we can have better content for everyone here on Iron Cannon. Star Wars Underworld Network. But yeah, I'll definitely work things through and get things through and have those things read in time to comment on them and talk about them. Because I mean that's the thing. Well, phase 3 is going to phase 3 is definitely gonna give us that time. And so that's what I'm looking forward to there. So I will definitely have the here on the tractor beam, we'll definitely have both while we're talking about High Republic, have both the Kevin Scott and Daniel Jose Older comics right here on the Tractor Beam, and then of course everything else on the Iron Cannon podcast. I guess before we say goodbye, do you have any last things about Shockwave by Alexander Freed?
Yeah, I was expecting more of a character that we know from Alphabet Squad or Twilight
Yeah.
Squadron or Twilight Company or whatever. So I was a little bit okay. We're getting more characters, which is never a bad thing in Star Wars.
Hmm.
So maybe we'll
Yeah.
see this couple show up again at some point.
Sure.
But yeah, it's just a nice X-wing story. I love
Hmm.
the story about the pilots. So it's right in his wheelhouse. It makes sense. So much that stuff happens in Return of the Jedi,
Sure.
so much content around that Battle of Endor. So yeah, that's a great way to celebrate the 40th anniversary of Return of the Jedi. There you go.
That's true. I mean, that's what we're doing. Why we're building towards it. Hopefully, the comics do end up getting there. I mean, and we know of that series of one shots, but hopefully, yeah. I mean, the Dark Droids does, as we've said, it has to somehow move the characters into that film by the end of this year because
Hmm.
got to celebrate the 40th anniversary. I will say one last point about Shockwave. Having new characters gives him the freedom to just
Hmm.
have any kind of backstory or whatever he wants for them. So,
Sure thing.
and that's so
Yeah.
important to these characters, this is backstory. So,
Yeah.
there we go. All right. There's the tractor beam. Chris, thanks for as always for joining. And thanks everyone for watching,
Hmm.
checking us out on your lunch break, your breakfast break, whatever it is, wherever you are. Chris, where can they find you on the internet?
YouTube.com/Starrapter is where they can find all of my current content.
Mhm.
Right now, I'm just covering comics and other things on the channel. So make sure you go ahead and check that out and
Mhm.
join a positive, friendly community over there,
Yes.
especially when we go live on Sundays at 7 p.m. I think we're going to go live at 8 p.m. It's usually 7 or 8, depending on who's going to be involved
Sure.
with the current podcast. But yes, Outer Rim Transmission will be back again on Sunday talking Star Wars.
Nice. And you can check out Chris's recaps, I believe, just of both Bounty Hunters and Hyperspace Stories.
Yep.
The video below there, the link is there. Check that out. You can find Joel and me at Ion Cannon, EYEONCANONPOD on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads. Follow my personal Instagram and Threads, MNEUG1138. Twitter, NEUG485. Yeah, and of course the main Ion Cannon podcast right here on the Star Wars Underworld Podcast Network on Underworld Facebook, Underworld YouTube, Underworld Twitch, Ion Cannon Twitch, Ion Cannon Twitter, Underworld Twitter, etc., wherever you want. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, more or less when we I can get to them. Yeah, whenever you get your podcasts every Mondays, 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific. But until then, let's see what the tractor beam drags in next week.